Welcome to my 2017 Game of the Year video. Now usually when I do these I like to go into both my favorite games of the year as well as my least favorite ones, but this time there's going to be a change because 2017 has been fucking amazing. There were like 3 games that actually disappointed me this year and they're not even worth talking about. On the other hand, 2017 has been so packed with so many incredible releases that if I were to give a shout out to only 5 of them, I'd walk away from this video unsatisfied. So this time I'm going to cut out all the criticisms and all the rantings and instead name the 10 games that I loved the most this year. Let's get right into it, starting with number 10. Path of Exile for me is the gift that keeps on giving. I've started playing this game in its beta back in 2011 or 12. I've logged almost 900 hours of playtime by now. It is the end of 2017 and I am still not done with it. Grinding gear games have shown an admirable willingness to keep building on Path of Exile. Every year they add new content and new mechanics, or they overhaul existing aspects. Every few months they reset the in-game ladders and introduce a new challenge league, which makes it possible for new players to come in and for old players to have something fresh to play with. And this year they have absolutely outdone themselves. Remember when in Diablo the game consisted of 4 acts that you went through on 3 different difficulties? Normal, Nightmare and Hell? Well, Diablo 2 was a milestone title and a lot of the games that were inspired by it, a la Path of Exile, copied that system and handled content in a similar way. So up until now, Path of Exile 2 had 4 acts and 3 difficulty levels that you needed to beat in order to reach the end game. And it was fine. It did get tedious sometimes, sure, but action RPGs are grindy by nature and the reusal of assets is an accepted genre standard. So imagine my surprise when this year Grinding Gear Games announced the Fall of Oriath expansion, which abolished the repeat difficulties and instead added 6 motherfucking new acts to the game. Act 5 as a completely new one and then remixes of the existing acts with new bosses, new paths and new enemy placements for acts 6 to 10. It's a change I didn't even know I wanted, but absolutely love now that I have it. And that is really my big takeaway with Path of Exile. It always was the best action RPG ever made in my mind, and one of my all-time favorite games. But the expansions this year made it even better, and so did the expansions last year, and the year before, and the year before that. Path of Exile always deserved to spot in my Game of the Year lists, because I keep returning to it every few months, and this year I'm finally giving it one. Glorious game. Moving on. I almost ended up not playing Nioh at all. I missed out on picking it up during its release because of other titles, and then the months went by without me ever actually coming back to it. But man, am I glad I did before the year was over, because this game is fascinating. Nioh breaks more rules and gaming conventions over the course of its 5 endings than the AAA industry has over the course of its past 5 years. It fucks with your graphics, UI and sound options in ways I have never seen from another game. It restricts gameplay functions and moves logically based on story beats, regardless of whether or not that might make it less enjoyable to play. And just with its usage of sometimes gripping, sometimes straight up bizarre vocals, it creates easily the best soundtrack of the year. If you enjoy a lot of video games, I think Nioh Automata is a must play, if just to see how far it manages to push the genre in terms of interactive storytelling. You have maybe heard that this game has some severe pacing issues during playthrough B, and that is true. Maybe you're even someone who fell victim to that route yourself and never actually finished it. But trust me, just push through. You beat Route A, you know where to go, the rest is merely consequence. Everything in Nioh from the ending of Route B onward is wild, and you need to experience it for yourself. Moving on. I don't get emotional very often, especially not from games. I mean, sure, some TV shows manage to slightly fuck me up once in a while since they usually offer way more time to get invested into the characters, but in over 20 years of playing games I've never seen one that actually made me tear up and choke. Until What Remains of Edith Finch. There is an incredible sadness hanging over the house you're investigating in this game, a profound sense of history that all the people that lived and died there left behind. The thoroughness with which What Remains of Edith Finch manages to give these characters a character, even though they are never really on screen or interacting with the protagonist, is absolutely impressive. Watching the Finch family go through so much together, only to have tragedy strike again and again, as someone who has experienced his own fair share of family tragedy, it was difficult to handle. But at the same time, it was so encouraging to see that games are finally trying to tackle different subject matters. And there are more and more examples you can point at and go, this is what good writing in video games looks like. It looks like What Remains of Edith Finch. If you can forgive the fairly steep price tag for what amounts to a game of just a few hours, buy this one and knock it out in an afternoon. I have a feeling I'll return to it soon enough myself. Moving on. This one is difficult. How on earth do you explain Wolfenstein 2 without spoiling anything? This game is fucking insane. The places it goes, the tonal roller coaster it puts you on, everything about its story defies tradition and structure and sense. But then how come New Colossus is also one of the best written games of the year? Between all the jarring tonal shifts, there are extremely well fleshed out characters here, one more flawed and sympathetic than the next. And Wolfenstein 2 has a lot of things to say about war, about mental problems, about American culture, and so on. You might not agree with everything, but how this game balances clever moments and characters with the absolute catharsis of its huge story twists is incredible to me. Even gameplay wise, New Colossus is a massive improvement over the previous game. I liked New Order well enough, but Wolfenstein 2's level design lends itself so much more to the quick hit and run shooter style that titles like this should go for. Also, some of the new upgrades you can install on your guns make dealing with the bullet spongy armored enemies from the first game way easier this time around. And boy oh fucking boy, these shotguns. I don't play many shooters, and this is probably the first time that even I noticed just how impactful and satisfying good guns can feel. New Colossus is a fucking blast from start to finish. Play it if you haven't yet, every second is worth it. Moving on. Yep, 2017 was a great year for walking sims. I was tearing up at the end of What Remains of Edith Finch, but Night in the Woods truly got to me. The way I see it, just about everyone who played this game got something personal out of it. The narrative of Night in the Woods has so many different qualities that there's an impressively widespread appeal here. Personally, I'm not even American, nor have I ever lived in a poor rural town, yet I still connected to these characters in a way I did not expect. Night in the Woods has this dichotomy going on, where the main character May refuses to take responsibility for her own life, while all of her friends have done so and are now slaving away at thankless dead-end jobs to make ends meet. Watching this scenario played out hit me like a punch in the gut, because it confronted me with some of my deepest fears that I've been carrying around with me for years. And that was only my personal connection. Yet other people loved Night in the Woods for its handling of anxiety and depression, or its depiction of underclass America, or its themes of returning home estranged from your former friends. Some just loved it for the plain stupid humor. All of that probably makes it my favorite story-driven title this year, and if you can forgive the massive nosedive at the end, then this game is heartily recommended. Moving on. If you had asked me after the first few hours if Hollow Knight was any good, let alone would make it into my top 10 this year, I would have probably yelled at you. I hated this game at first. I guess it's a danger with Metroidvanias in general, but out of all the possible routes I could have taken when I started playing this, I ended up taking the worst one every time. The one where I got nothing but crap upgrades that didn't advance my combat potential at all, while every boss fight got more and more elaborate. I was furious and frustrated to a point where I almost dropped Hollow Knight a few hours in. But lo and behold, after visiting some other areas, I eventually found a loadout that actually worked. And once I did, I was finally able to concentrate on exploring and appreciating how good this game really is. There are so many memorable areas in Hollow Knight, and the layout and sound design of some of these is just brilliant. Like the soothing piano music in the City of Tears, or Deepness, which is that unpleasant feeling you have when you believe there's a spider crawling over your body made into an entire underground maze. I already loved Hollow Knight at that point. Watching someone else go for a 100% playthrough after my own, however, made me realize just how much detail there is to this game. In terms of enemy types, in terms of environmental storytelling, and just how much of it I hadn't even noticed the first time around. I think it's clear at this point that anyone who enjoys the Metroidvania genre should check out Hollow Knight. It really is the quintessential one. And I'm convinced the fact that a game release as polished and beautiful as this, made by such a small team, came out of nowhere for most people, will cement it as one of the true classics from here on out. Moving on. Divinity Original Sin 2 is a game that should not be able to exist. Yet, here it is. Look, I love CRPGs. I love the old classics like Arcanum, I love the new ones like Pillars of Eternity, hell I even gave Divinity Original Sin 1 my game of the year in 2014. But what needs to be said about CRPGs in general is that even the best ones are all incredibly flawed games, because they are usually so big and have so much content and so many mechanics in them that some aspects inevitably end up being undercooked. Arcanum, for example, has masterful world building and music, but awful combat. Baldur's Gate 2 has insanely great characters and quests, but is unbalanced as all fuck. And Shadowrun Dragonfall, great reactive main story, but kind of a letdown in terms of loot and character progression. So when I'm looking at Divinity Original Sin 2 and somehow every single aspect of it is fucking stellar, something feels wrong. I have long since accepted that this genre is full of amazing yet flawed games, so how can Larian create something so chock full of content and variety that is also just rock solid whatever way you look at it? The combat is fantastic, the art direction is beautiful, the music is catchy and heroic, the amount and variety of loot you can find is insane, exploration is consistently rewarding, and the writing and tone are more serious than in the previous game, which makes them way stronger this time around. And I mean, holy fucking shit, this is a massive 70+ hour long RPG, and every single NPC has a name, can be traded with, and is fully voice acted. Fully voice acted, and it's not even bad voice acting. How can this be coming from a Kickstarter game? As I said, it shouldn't be possible. Divinity Original Sin 2 is a jaw-dropping achievement and undeniably, objectively, one of the best RPGs ever made. Moving on.
All are not the same, but three shall be as one. Freedom in the flame, the end has just begun. Strands may break along.
Ever since Transistor, I considered Supergiant Games to be my favorite developer, and I always thought to myself that maybe that's a weird position to take given that they only released 2 games so far. Pyre, however, proved it to me. These guys are unrivaled when it comes to the indie scene. I could talk about any individual aspect of this game and praise it to the high heavens. The storytelling, the characters, the themes, the soundtrack, the art style, the genius innovative combination of sports game and visual novel. But it's not only about the individual parts, it's about how every aspect logically enhances every other aspect, as if they were always meant for each other. Like how the musicians that perform the most important parts of the in-game music are also actual characters within the story, and how your decisions during both the sports matches and the visual novel parts work as a metaphor for the overarching plot goal. And that is exactly the bigger point I need to make about Supergiant. They have such a holistic approach to game creation, coupled with a distinct style and the willingness to always try something new. They not only have a vision, but the talent and foresight to implement it too, and it works every time. I'm sorry if I'm drifting into meaningless platitudes right now, but picking out more individual things to praise about this game just wouldn't accurately portray my deep love for it. Pyre is a masterpiece, and the fact that I still got 2 titles to go on this list, even though a game of this quality would easily win any other year, speaks volumes as to how crazy 2017 has been. Moving on. Probably the most overlooked game of the year, Snake Pass is what I wish so many more games were. A profoundly innovative idea, almost flawlessly executed in its first try. You move like a snake. You have one button for slithering, one for gripping the current surface you're on, and one for raising your head. The rest is done by controlling your head's movement left and right. That's it. That's the entire idea, and yet Snake Pass ended up being one of the most instantly engaging games I have ever played, because it works so well. There is such a natural joy to this control scheme. Every single movement has to be considered, even though all you ultimately do is climb a bunch of bamboo sticks. And that is the genius of Snake Pass. At its core, it's deceptively simple, but once you realize how much depth and nuance there is here, every successful platforming bit showers you with satisfaction. Real talk, if this Game of the Year video inspires you to check out even just a single game based on my recommendations, let it be this one. If you want more innovation in the games industry, then you simply owe it to yourself to give Snake Pass the time of day. Moving on. And here we have my Game of the Year. I feel like this one has been covered to death at this point, and I probably can't add anything substantial to it anymore. But Breath of the Wild is nothing short of a contender for Game of the Generation, and this is coming from someone who has enjoyed almost no open world game in between Arkham City and this one. Does it have issues? Yes, of course. The dungeons, the enemy variety, and the quests are all lacking. At some point I think it will be noticeable to anyone that you are really just going through a somewhat samey gameplay loop over and over, and it will get tedious eventually. But personally, I reached that point a good 60 or so hours into the game, and everything up until then had been some of the most mesmerizing and absorbing exploration I ever experienced. Breath of the Wild came out right after I finished my studies, when I had more than enough time on my hands. I was absolutely glued to the screen for a week straight, and I fucking loved it. I'm afraid that if the next game is going to be open world also, it won't have nearly the same effect, but for now my head is off to Nintendo. They delivered, and it seems the internet agrees with me. I wish you all a happy new year. Bouken, signing out.